the first thing to imagine is not the black hole itself, but the quiet ring around it. A slow halo of light circling something unseen. Matter does not rush here. It drifts. It glides. Tiny grains of dust and thin clouds of gas move in wide, patient arcs, tracing luminous paths through darkness. Nothing screams, nothing collides in panic. Everything follows a curve, as if the universe has decided to write in circles tonight. The glow you see is not fire, not flame, but motion itself, warmed gently by friction and time. A soft physics at work, almost tender in its precision. For a few moments, let there be no names for what you're imagining. No formulas, no definitions. Just the sense of something endlessly turning, like a thought that never quite lands but never needs to. The disk breathes in slow revolutions. Each orbit is a promise to keep moving, but never too fast. Even here, near one of the most extreme objects in existence, there is restraint. There is patience. Welcome to AstraFlow. Here, science drifts like starlight, and curiosity becomes calm. Tonight, let your thoughts slow down, your breathing find its rhythm, and your mind float through wonder. As you settle into this space, you might notice how naturally your attention begins to soften. You don't need to hold on to every idea. You don't need to understand everything all at once. This is a place for listening, not effort. Some people find these moments late at night, when the world has finally grown quiet. Others return here again and again, letting familiar rhythms guide them gently toward rest. However you've arrived, you're welcome here. I'm curious, are you listening for the first time tonight, or is this a familiar orbit you return to when sleep feels distant? You don't need to answer out loud. Just let the question drift past you, like light passing through a thin veil of dust. And if this calm journey brings you peace, you can gently support AstraFlow by liking this video or subscribing. It helps this quiet corner of the cosmos keep glowing, softly and steadily, for anyone who needs a place to rest their thoughts. Tonight, our path leads us into one of the universe's most graceful structures, the Accretion disk, a place where matter learns how to fall slowly, where gravity does not pull in a straight line but teaches everything to spiral, to circle, to wait. We'll explore how these disks form, why they shine, and how their quiet motion reveals deep truths about time, energy, and rest itself. There is no rush to reach the center. In fact, we never need to arrive at all. Now let's begin tonight's voyage into the quiet story of the soft physics of black hole accretion disks. Why doesn't matter simply fall straight in? It's a question that seems almost childlike in its simplicity, and yet it opens a wide, gentle door into the heart of tonight's story. When something is pulled by gravity, we often imagine a direct path, a clean line from here to there, downward, inward, finished. But the universe rarely chooses straight lines when curves will do, especially when time is abundant. Imagine a grain of dust far from a black hole drifting through space. It is not motionless, nothing ever truly is. That grain carries with it a small sideways movement, a quiet memory of motion from long ago, perhaps from the slow rotation of a galaxy, or the subtle tug of nearby matter. When gravity begins to call it inward, that sideways motion doesn't disappear, it lingers, and so instead of falling straight down, the dust begins to arc. Gravity pulls inward, motion carries it forward, the result is a curve. This is how spirals are born, not from indecision, but from balance. The question then is not why matter spirals, but why it would ever do anything else. Falling straight in would require forgetting all sideways motion entirely, and the universe is very good at remembering. Every particle keeps a trace of where it has been, how it once moved. That memory becomes orbit. As matter drifts closer, its path tightens. The curve becomes smaller, more intimate. Each loop takes less time than the last, yet even now there is no urgency. The motion feels deliberate, almost careful, like walking a familiar path in the dark, guided not by sight, but by feel. If you notice your own thoughts tonight, they may behave in a similar way. Rarely do they move straight toward rest. Instead, they circle, they revisit, they loop gently around concerns, memories, or unfinished questions. This is not failure. It is how motion slows down. Circling is often the first step towards stillness. In physics, we give this behavior a name, angular momentum. But you don't need the term to feel the idea. It is simply the reason why motion curves, why falling becomes orbit, why the universe prefers patience over haste. Angular momentum is not a force pushing outward. It is a quiet insistence on continuing sideways, even while being pulled inward. As the grain of dust circles the black hole, it joins countless others doing the same. Together, they begin to trace a shared plane, a thin, glowing disk. Each particle moves alone, yet the pattern they create is collective. Order emerging without command, structure arising without design. You might imagine that closer to a black hole, everything becomes violent and chaotic. But here, in the wide outer regions of an accretion disk, the dominant feeling is calm persistence. Orbit after orbit, matter learns how to move without rushing, how to lose energy slowly, how to take its time, and perhaps as you listen your own thoughts can do the same. No need to fall straight into sleep, no need to arrive, just allow yourself to circle gently. As gravity, quiet and constant, does the rest. Before we travel any deeper, it helps to soften our expectations of understanding. Tonight is not about mastering a concept, but about becoming familiar with a feeling. So let's take a moment to gently outline what an accretion disk truly is, without technical edges, without sharp definitions. An accretion disk is a place where motion organizes itself. It forms when matter gathers around something massive, a black hole, a young star, even a white dwarf, and instead of collapsing inward all at once, it spreads into a thin, rotating disk. Picture a wide, quiet whirlpool, not in water, but in space itself. The matter inside it does not touch, it does not splash, it glides in layers, each ring moving at its own unhurried pace. What makes this image so calming is that nothing here is sudden. The disk is not a crash, it is a negotiation. Gravity invites matter inward, while motion gently resists. The result is a long conversation between falling and staying aloft. Over time, that conversation shapes the disk into something smooth, flat, and luminous. The light from an accretion disk does not come from burning. There is no flame licking the darkness. Instead, the glow emerges from friction, from countless particles brushing past one another, transferring energy, warming ever so slightly as they move. Motion becomes heat, heat becomes light, and light drifts outward, carrying the story of the disk across the universe. If you were far away, watching from a quiet corner of a galaxy, the disk would appear as a thin ring of radiance, brightest near the center, softer toward the edges, a gradient of effort, a gradient of time. Nothing demands your attention all at once. Your eyes would naturally rest where the glow feels most gentle. Accretion disks are not rare exceptions. They are a common pattern in the cosmos. Wherever matter gathers and gravity holds sway, disks appear. Around forming stars, they cradle planets yet to be born. Around black holes, they trace the slow consumption of matter over millions of years. The same physics, repeating across scales, adapting to context, never rushing. This repetition is comforting. It suggests that the universe does not reinvent itself each time. It reuses simple ideas, letting them unfold patiently in different places, circling, drifting, glowing. As you listen, you don't need to keep track of every detail. Let the idea of the disk be more like a shape than a lesson. A soft ring, a slow turn. a quiet glow in the dark. The science is there, holding everything together, but it does not need to speak loudly. Think of this overview as a place to rest before moving onward, a wide, stable orbit where nothing pulls too hard. From here we can explore individual ideas one by one, gravity, heat, time, without strain. And if your mind wanders, that's part of the pattern too. Wandering is just another kind of orbit. For now, let the image of the accretion disk settle gently in your awareness, a reminder that even near darkness there can be light. Even within motion there can be calm. Gravity is often described as a force, something firm and commanding, pulling everything sharply inward. But in the quiet story of accretion disks, gravity feels different. It behaves less like a grab and more like an invitation. A steady presence that does not shout, does not hurry, simply waits. Matter responds not because it must, but because over time there is nowhere else quite as comfortable to drift toward. Imagine gravity here as a low, constant hum beneath everything else. It doesn't change much from moment to moment. It doesn't need to. Its strength is in its patience. As dust and gas wander through space, gravity is already there, shaping paths long before anything notices. By the time matter begins to curve inward, gravity has been quietly guiding it for ages. This invitation is subtle. Matter is not yanked from its path. Instead, its path slowly bends. A straight line becomes an arc becomes a loop. The closer matter drifts, the more clearly gravity's presence is felt, not as force, but as direction. Like a slope so gentle you only realise you're descending when you look back. In an accretion disk, gravity does not cancel motion, it cooperates with it. Sideways movement becomes orbit. Forward momentum becomes a curve. The disk exists because gravity allows matter to keep moving while still drawing it inward. Nothing here is wasted. Every motion has a place. There is something deeply restful about this idea. Gravity does not demand immediate surrender. It allows time. It allows hesitation. Matter can circle thousands, even millions of times before moving closer to the centre. In cosmic terms, that is generosity. You might notice how different this feels from how pressure often shows up in human life. We are used to urgency, to deadlines, to straight lines from problem to solution. Gravity reminds us that influence does not need speed to be effective, it only needs consistency. As matter responds to this invitation, the accretion disk becomes smoother. Chaotic paths slowly align. Random motion settles into shared direction, not because anything forces agreement, but because the simplest path is often the calmest one. Moving together reduces friction. Circling together creates stability. This is one of the soft lessons hidden inside the physics. Systems don't always become ordered through control. Sometimes they become ordered through patience, through letting motion repeat until it naturally finds balance. As you rest with this thought, you may feel your own sense of effort easing. There is no need to pull yourself towards sleep, no need to push thoughts away. Gravity will do what it always does. It will invite. Your mind can circle for a while longer if it needs to. Eventually, gently, it will drift inward on its own. Let gravity be quiet tonight. Let it be a presence, not a pressure. Something you can trust to hold you without asking for anything in return. Long before the disk becomes bright and defined, there is only a loose gathering, a faint suggestion of structure. Thin gas, scattered dust, barely aware of one another, drifting through space with enormous distances between each particle. This is how accretion begins, not with density, not with drama, but with subtle proximity. Picture a wide, quiet region around the black hole, where matter is still sparse. Here, particles move almost freely, rarely interacting, but gravity is already at work, gently guiding their paths so that, over time, their trajectories begin to cross more often. Not collisions exactly, plus just more like passing glances, small exchanges of motion, tiny acknowledgements of presence. As these encounters increase, the cloud begins to flatten, not because something presses down on it, but because motion prefers a shared plane. Particles moving in many random directions slowly cancel one another out, leaving behind a dominant direction of rotation. What remains is quieter, more coordinated. A disk begins to emerge, not sharply defined, but hinted at, like a shape forming in fog. This early gathering is slow. It can take thousands of years for the disk to become noticeable, millions for it to grow luminous. In this phase, nothing demands attention. There is no clear boundary between disk and space, just a gradual increase in companionship. Matter spending more time near other matter, learning how to move together. It's worth lingering here because this stage is often overlooked. We tend to focus on bright centres and dramatic edges, but the foundation of the disk is built in near silence, in patience, in repeated, almost forgettable interactions. The universe is not in a hurry to reveal its structures. It allows them to assemble at the pace of comfort. As dust and gas continue to gather, their shared motion becomes clearer. The disk grows thinner, wider, more coherent. Each particle still follows its own path, yet those paths begin to resemble one another. A collective rhythm forms, like individual breaths slowly sinking in a quiet room. If you imagine this process happening now, far away, you might notice how it mirrors the way rest arrives in the body. At first, relaxation is scattered. A shoulder softens. The jaw loosens. The breath deepens once or twice, nothing all at once. Just small regions of ease appearing, gradually connecting. The early accretion disk is like that. A body learning how to rest into a pattern. There is no instruction manual, no central command, just simple rules applied over time, giving rise to something gentle and stable. You don't need to hold this image tightly. Let it stay soft around the edges, a faint disk, still forming, still deciding how to exist. It will become brighter later, more defined. But for now, it is enough to know that even the most luminous structures in the universe begin as quiet gatherings. As the disk continues to take shape, something quietly important becomes clearer. Rotation is not an accident. It is not a temporary phase on the way to falling. Rotation is the reason falling becomes slow. Every particle in the accretion disk carries sideways motion, a gentle inheritance from earlier journeys through space. When gravity draws matter inward, it does not erase that sideways movement. Instead, the two motions combine. Inward pull and sideways drift weave together, producing a curved path. This is why matter does not plunge directly toward the centre, but instead traces wide circles that slowly tighten over time. You can imagine it like walking across ice while holding a rope tied to a post. The rope pulls you inward, but your steps carry you forward. The result is a spiral, not a fall. In space there is no ice and no rope, only gravity and motion, but the feeling is similar. Forward movement keeps matter suspended, even as it descends. This refusal to fall straight down is not resistance, it is balance. The universe does not fight gravity, it dances with it. Rotation gives matter time. Time to orbit, time to interact with neighbouring particles, time to shed energy gradually rather than all at once. Closer to the black hole, rotation speeds up. Orbits tighten. Each ring of the disk moves faster than the one outside it, like lanes of a quiet cosmic current. This difference in speed is crucial. It creates gentle friction between layers, allowing energy to be transferred and released as warmth and light. Without rotation, there would be no disk, only a brief collapse, and then silence. There is something deeply reassuring about this. Even near one of the strongest gravitational pulls in existence, motion is allowed to continue. Nothing is forced into immediacy. The universe seems to understand that slowing down is sometimes the most stable option. If you notice your own thoughts tonight, they may behave in the same way. Rarely do they drop directly into sleep. Instead, they rotate. They revisit familiar paths. They move around the center of rest without touching it yet. This is not delay, it is preparation. Rotation creates space between effort and outcome. It gives the system, cosmic or human, room to adjust, room to soften, room to glow gently rather than burn. So if your mind is still circling, let it. Falling straight into sleep is not required. Orbiting is enough. Gravity will continue its quiet work, and when the moment is right, the spiral will tighten on its own. As matter continues its slow rotation, something subtle begins to happen between neighbouring paths. Each ring of the accretion disk moves at a slightly different speed. Inner orbits travel faster, outer ones more slowly. Where these layers meet, there is no collision in the usual sense, no sharp impact. Instead, there is a soft rubbing, a quiet sharing of motion. This is friction, but not the harsh kind you might imagine from everyday life. Here, friction is almost courteous. Particles brush past one another, exchanging tiny amounts of energy. Over countless orbits, these small exchanges add up. Motion is gently converted into warmth. Warmth spreads through the disk like a slow dawn. This heat has nowhere to hide. In space, warmth does not linger in the air, it must be released, and so the disk begins to glow. The light from an accretion disk is not a sign of destruction. It is a sign of balance. Energy is not trapped. It is allowed to leave, drifting outward as radiation, carrying away excess motion so that matter can continue its inward journey without chaos. The glow is the disk breathing out. What's remarkable is how gradual this process is. A single orbit produces almost no heat at all. It is repetition that matters. Thousands of revolutions, millions, each one adding a whisper of warmth until the disk shines brighter than entire galaxies combined, all without a single flame. If you imagine standing far away, watching this glow, it would not flicker. It would not pulse urgently. It would appear steady, calm, reliable. A continuous expression of motion being softened into light. There is something comforting in this idea. Effort does not need to disappear to become gentle. It can transform. Movement becomes warmth. Warmth becomes light. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is rushed. In human terms, this is what happens when rest begins to arrive. The sharp edges of thought soften. Tension doesn't vanish instantly. It warms, loosens, and slowly fades. The mind releases what it no longer needs, one small exchange at a time. So if you feel a quiet warmth spreading through your body now, a sense of heaviness or ease, you can think of it as your own version of friction. Not resistance, but transition. Motion becoming rest, thought becoming glow. The accretion disk continues to turn, releasing light simply by moving together, and you, listening, are allowed to do the same. When we imagine something glowing in the universe, we often picture flames, sparks, or explosions. But the colours of an accretion disk come from a quieter source. There is no burning here, no oxygen, no fire. The light is born from temperature alone, from how fast particles move and how gently they release that motion into space. As the disk warms, it begins to shine in different colours, depending on where you look. Farther out, where motion is slower and friction is light, the disk glows softly, often in reds and infrared tones. Closer in, where orbits tighten and speeds increase, the light shifts toward whites, blues, and even invisible ultraviolet and X-rays. This gradient is not dramatic, it is smooth, a gradual deepening of energy as distance decreases. You can imagine the disk as a long, quiet spectrum laid out in space. No sharp boundaries, no sudden changes, just a continuous transition from cool to warm, from dim to bright. Each colour tells a story about motion at that distance from the centre. What's especially gentle about this light is that it does not demand to be seen. Much of it is invisible to human eyes. It passes through the universe unnoticed until it happens to encounter a telescope or a sensor or a curious mind. Only then does it become information. Only then does it become part of a story. Scientists learn about accretion disks by listening to this colour. By measuring which wavelengths arrive and how they change, they can reconstruct the disk structure from afar. But you don't need that analysis tonight. You can simply rest with the idea that motion has colour, and colour can exist without flame. There is a quiet poetry in that. Light without fire, heat without sound, intensity without violence. In moments of rest, our own experiences can feel similar. Strong feelings don't always announce themselves loudly. Sometimes they appear as a subtle shift, a warmth behind the eyes, a heaviness in the limbs, a softening of breath. No drama required. As the accretion disk continues to glow, it does so evenly, patiently, never flaring unless disturbed. Its colours are stable expressions of balance, not signs of chaos. Even near a black hole, the universe chooses gradients over extremes. Let those gradients exist in your mind now. There is no need for sharp focus. Let the image blur slightly. Reds fading into blues, warmth blending into darkness. A spectrum that asks nothing of you except to drift along with it. One way to understand the accretion disk is to stop thinking of it as a thing and begin thinking of it as a movement. Not an object suspended in space, but a river, wide, layered, and endlessly flowing. A river without banks, without sound, without a surface you could touch. A river made of matter itself. In this river, nothing is still. Every particle is in motion, yet the motion is so regular that it appears calm. Just as a slow-moving river can look like glass from a distance, the accretion disk hides its speed behind smoothness. Each ring flows alongside its neighbours, not crashing, not competing, simply keeping pace in its own lane. Like any river, the disk has regions of different character. Far from the centre, the flow is broad and unhurried. Matter takes its time, drifting through long orbits that can last years, centuries, or more. Closer in, the current tightens. The flow becomes faster, warmer, brighter, not because it is angry, but because the path has narrowed. What keeps this river from breaking apart is shared direction. Every particle knows which way to move. There is no confusion about upstream or downstream. Gravity provides the slope and rotation provides the curve. Together, they define a path that feels inevitable, yet gentle. In rivers on Earth, water flows downhill because of gravity releasing energy as it goes. In an accretion disk, matter does something similar. As it spirals inward, it slowly gives up energy, not all at once, but bit by bit. The energy becomes light, radiated outward, like sunlight reflecting off a distant stream. The river metaphor also reminds us that no single particle controls the flow. There is no leader, no central command. Order emerges because each piece follows simple rules and those rules are shared. The disk is cooperative by nature. You might notice how restful this idea feels. A system that works not through effort but through alignment, each part doing very little on its own, yet together creating something luminous and enduring. If you allow your thoughts to behave like this river tonight, you don't need to stop them. You don't need to dam them or redirect them forcefully. Just let them flow in one direction, gently inward, toward rest. Some thoughts will move quickly. Others will linger at the edges. That's fine. Rivers are not uniform, and neither is the mind. The accretion disk continues its quiet journey, carrying matter toward the centre without urgency. A cosmic river flowing not toward noise or collapse, but toward balance, toward a place where motion and stillness meet. As matter drifts closer to the heart of the disk, something curious begins to happen, not to space, but to time itself. Near a black hole, time does not behave the way it does in quiet, open space. It stretches, it slows, it begins to linger, as if reluctant to move forward. You don't need equations to feel this. Imagine walking toward a deep valley. Each step downward feels heavier, more deliberate. Near the bottom, even small movements require care. Time near a black hole behaves in a similar way. The stronger the gravity, the more time resists change. Moments lengthen, seconds grow spacious. For matter in the accretion disk, this means that inner orbits experience time differently than outer ones. From far away, we might see the inner disk racing, glowing intensely, completing orbit after orbit. But from the perspective of the matter itself, nothing feels rushed. Its own clock ticks normally. It is the outside universe that seems to hurry past. This gentle distortion of time is not violent. It does not tear or snap. It simply curves, just as paths curve in space. Time and motion remain smooth, continuous, patient. Even here, near the edge of one of nature's most extreme boundaries, the universe avoids sharpness. There is a quiet comfort in this idea. The closer matter moves toward the centre, the more time stretches out for it. The journey does not feel shorter or more abrupt. It feels longer, more spacious, almost considerate. If you've ever noticed that time seems to slow as you relax, that minutes feel softer, less defined, you've touched a faint echo of this effect. When urgency fades, time expands. When attention loosens, moments become wider. The accretion disk teaches us that slowing down is not a failure of motion. It is a natural response to depth, to gravity, to significance. Things slow where they matter most. As you listen now, there is no schedule to keep, no moment you need to reach. Time can stretch around you, just as it does near the glowing centre of the disk. Each breath can take as long as it wants. Each thought can arrive, pause, and drift away. The universe allows time to soften near darkness. You can allow the same gentleness here. Now we slow even further and let the fact fade into the background. Here, there is no need to explain, only to linger. Picture a single ring within the accretion disk, just one. It does not rush inward. It does not move outward. It simply circles, again and again and again. Each orbit is almost identical to the last. The path repeats so precisely that from a distance, motion begins to resemble stillness. Like the hands of a clock moving too slowly to notice, the circle feels eternal. There is comfort in that repetition. Nothing unexpected happens here. Nothing needs to change. The matter in this ring has no awareness of beginning or end. There is only the curve beneath it, the gentle pull inward, the quiet insistence of motion continuing sideways. No destination is required. The act of circling is enough. If you stay with this image, you may notice your own breathing begin to echo it. In, around, out, around. Not in straight lines, but in loops. Each breath similar to the last, yet never exactly the same. Subtle variations held within a stable pattern. The hypnotic quality of the disc comes from this balance. Motion without progress, change without urgency, energy being released so slowly that it feels like rest. Even the glow seems unbothered by time, shining not brighter, not dimmer, just steadily present. This is the deepest comfort the accretion disk offers. Permission to remain in motion without needing to arrive. To repeat, without boredom. To exist within a cycle that asks nothing more than continuation. Thoughts can rest here too. They don't need to resolve. They don't need to conclude. Let them circle gently, like matter in this ring, losing sharpness with each pass. Edges soften, importance fades. What remains is rhythm. If sleep begins to approach now, it does not need to be sudden. It can circle closer over many quiet turns. Just as matter may orbit thousands of times before drifting inward, your awareness can float at the edge of rest for as long as it likes. Stay with the circle, stay with the repetition. Nothing is pulling you suddenly. Everything is moving slowly enough to feel safe. When we look at an accretion disk from far away, what's most striking is not how dramatic it is, but how long it lasts. These disks can persist for millions of years, sometimes longer, maintaining their shape with quiet confidence. In a universe full of explosions and endings, stability is something rare and precious. The secret to this endurance lies in balance. Every particle in the disk is constantly negotiating between two tendencies. Gravity draws it inward, asking it to move closer to the center. Rotation carries it sideways, asking it to keep moving forward. Neither wins completely. And because neither wins, the disk survives. This balance is dynamic, not frozen. Nothing is locked in place. Every orbit shifts slightly. Every path evolves. Yet the overall structure remains recognizable, like a familiar melody played with small variations. Stability here does not mean stillness. It means reliable change. The disk is also balanced in another way, between chaos and order. On very small scales, motion is messy. Particles jostle, exchange energy, drift unpredictably for a moment or two. But when you step back, those tiny irregularities smooth out. What remains is a clear, elegant pattern. Order emerging not by control, but by averaging over time. There is something deeply soothing about this. It tells us that perfection is not required for stability. Small disturbances do not destroy the whole. The disk absorbs them, redistributes their energy, and continues on. Resilience is built into the motion itself. In human life, rest often works the same way. Calm does not mean the absence of thought. It means thoughts moving gently enough that they no longer disturb the whole. A worry may appear, circle once or twice, then fade into the background without disrupting the larger rhythm. As you listen, you might notice moments of distraction, a sound, a memory, a shift in your body. None of these need to pull you out of rest. They can be folded back into the flow, just as small disturbances are folded into the disk. The accretion disk reminds us that balance is something you inhabit, not something you achieve once and for all. It is renewed continuously, orbit by orbit, breath by breath. And here, in this moment, you are already balanced enough. There is nothing you need to fix, nothing you need to hold perfectly still. You're allowed to move gently within rest, and rest gently within motion. Even the most patient systems experience change. An accretion disk is stable, but it is not rigid. Within its smooth glow, small disturbances sometimes arise, ripples in motion, slight shifts in density, gentle waves that travel through the flow. These moments of instability are not failures. They're part of how the disk stays alive. Imagine a calm lake. Its surface is mostly still, yet a breeze can pass across it, creating soft patterns that appear and fade without breaking the whole. In the same way, an accretion disk can host waves and eddies, regions where matter bunches up for a while, places where energy is released a little faster, then settles back down. These instabilities are slow. They unfold over many orbits. Nothing snaps or shatters. The disk adjusts gradually, redistributing energy and momentum until balance is restored. Change here is more like a sigh than a shock. What's important is that instability does not erase order. It reshapes it. The disk does not collapse because of a ripple. It learns from it. Motion shifts slightly, paths adapt, and the overall structure remains. There is a kindness in this physics. It suggests that systems do not require constant calm to function. They require the ability to recover, to absorb variation without panic. If you notice your own rest tonight interrupted by a wandering thought or a sudden awareness, you can think of it as one of these ripples. Not a problem, not a setback, just a brief change in flow. You don't need to push it away. Let it pass through, and the larger rhythm will reassert itself naturally. The accretion disc has no preference for perfection. It thrives on tolerance, on the ability to remain whole while allowing small movements within. As you continue listening, there may be moments of clarity and moments of blur. Both are welcome, both belong. Stability is not the absence of movement. It is the freedom to move without losing balance. Deep within the calm motion of the accretion disc, there is a process so subtle it feels almost invisible. It does not announce itself with sound or light, yet without it nothing in the disc could change. This process is called viscosity, a quiet resistance that allows motion to slowly rearrange itself. Viscosity is not about stopping movement, it is about sharing it. In the disc, inner rings move faster than outer ones. When these layers slide past each other, viscosity allows a tiny exchange to occur. A whisper of momentum drifts outward, a hint of energy moves inward. Over time, this sharing lets matter inch closer to the centre, while some motion escapes to wider orbits. You can imagine viscosity as the disc's way of communicating with itself. Each layer tells the next how fast it is moving, and adjusts just enough to stay connected. No layer acts alone. Everything listens, then responds. What makes this especially gentle is how slow it all is. Viscosity does not rush. It works over thousands of orbits, smoothing differences so gradually that the disc never notices a sudden change. From moment to moment, everything feels the same. Only over long spans of time does transformation become clear. This is one of the reasons accretion discs are so enduring. They have a built-in way to evolve without disruption. Energy moves outward, matter moves inward, balance is preserved. In daily life, we often expect change to be obvious, dramatic, measurable. But viscosity reminds us that some of the most meaningful change happens quietly, almost unnoticed. A thought softens, a habit loosens, a tension fades. Not because it was forced, but because it was gently shared and released. As you rest here, listening, you don't need to feel change happening. If it's occurring at all, it will be subtle. You might only notice it later, when sleep has already arrived, and effort has long since drifted away. The accretion disc continues its work, guided by this quiet mathematics. Nothing flashy, nothing urgent, just a steady exchange, allowing motion to find its way home. From a distance, it might seem as though a black hole is constantly devouring everything around it. But the accretion disk tells a very different story. Here, feeding happens slowly, carefully, almost reluctantly. Only a small fraction of the matter in the disk moves inward at any given time. Most of it continues to orbit, releasing energy, adjusting its path, waiting. The black hole does not gulp. It sips. And between each sip, there is a long pause. This slowness is essential. If all the matter fell in at once, the disk would vanish in a brief flash of light and then go dark. Instead, the disk regulates itself. Viscosity meters the flow. Rotation maintains distance. Energy escapes as light. What remains continues its patient circling. In this way, accretion disks act less like funnels and more like filters. They decide, gradually, what can move inward and when. Nothing is wasted, nothing is hurried. There is something deeply calming about this restraint. Even near the ultimate sink in the universe, nothing feels desperate. Matter is not dragged screaming into darkness. It drifts slowly on paths it has followed many times before. If you think of rest as something that happens when everything stops at once, the disk offers a gentler alternative. Rest can arrive gradually, piece by piece, a little less effort here, a little less tension there, no need for total surrender all at once. The darkness at the center waits. It does not chase. It does not demand. Gravity remains constant, allowing the disk to decide its own pace. The universe seems comfortable with delay. As you listen, you might sense that same permission. Sleep does not need to take you immediately. It can approach slowly, orbiting your awareness, drawing closer only when everything is ready. The accretion disk continues feeding the darkness, one quiet moment at a time, and in that patience, it glows. Here, we slow again. Slower than before, facts soften, edges blur. What remains is a feeling. Imagine the accretion disk not as something you see, but something you sense. A vast rotating presence, humming without sound. Not a vibration you could hear, but one you might feel. A steady, continuous motion that never interrupts itself. Every particle is moving, yet nothing feels busy. The hum is made of repetition, orbit layered upon orbit, path following path, a rhythm so consistent that it becomes a kind of stillness. If motion had a resting state, this would be it. Stay, with a single moment in the disk. Not the beginning of an orbit, not the end, just the middle. That long, uneventful stretch where nothing changes noticeably. Matter slides forward, gravity holds gently, friction whispers. Light is released, then forgotten. The system continues. This is where effort disappears. Not because motion stops, but because motion no longer struggles. Everything knows what to do. There is no decision to make, no correction required. Just continuation. If you listen closely to your own body now, you might notice a similar hum. The quiet work of breathing, the circulation beneath your skin, the subtle balance that keeps you upright, even as you rest. These processes do not ask for attention. They simply proceed. Thoughts too can hum. They don't need to speak clearly, they don't need to resolve. Let them become background motion, present, but no longer demanding. Like distant traffic heard through a closed window, or waves breaking far offshore. In this deep anchor, nothing is pulling you inward yet. Nothing is pushing you away. You are suspended in motion that feels safe enough to forget. This is the kind of motion that leads naturally to sleep, not because it forces rest, but because it removes the need for effort. The accretion disk hums on, patient and unbroken, and you are allowed to hum along softly until awareness itself begins to fade. As we gently lift our gaze outward, it becomes clear that the accretion disk surrounding a black hole is not a lonely phenomenon. It is part of a much larger family of structures, repeating throughout the universe wherever gravity and motion meet. The same soft physics appears again and again, adapting quietly to different environments. Around young stars, accretion disks glow softly as they cradle future planets. Dust grains collide, stick, separate, and return, slowly assembling worlds that do not yet know their names. Around white dwarfs and neutron stars, disks shimmer with similar patience, though their centers are smaller, denser, and closer to ordinary matter. Even there, the disk does not rush. It circles, it negotiates, it releases energy gradually. What changes from system to system is not the pattern, but the scale. The distances grow or shrink, the temperatures rise or fall, the light shifts in colour. Yet the underlying rhythm remains the same. Matter remembers how to orbit. Gravity invites inward motion. Rotation grants time. This repetition is deeply comforting. It tells us that the universe favours familiar solutions. When it finds a way for matter to move calmly and persistently, it reuses that solution wherever it can. Accretion disks are not exceptions born of extreme circumstances. They are expressions of a preferred cosmic habit. If you imagine drifting through the universe, passing from one star system to another, from one galaxy to the next, you would encounter these disks again and again. each one unique in detail yet instantly recognizable in spirit. A thin plane of light, a slow spiral, a quiet glow against the dark. There is something restful about knowing that even in unfamiliar places the same gentle rules apply. No reinvention is required, no chaos is necessary. The universe trusts its own patterns, and perhaps that trust can extend to you as well. You don't need to become someone else to find rest. You don't need a new strategy each night. The same simple motions, breath, attention, letting go, can guide you again and again, just as reliably as gravity guides matter into orbit. Accretion disks, scattered across the cosmos, continue their work without awareness of one another. Yet together, they form a quiet network of repetition and calm. A reminder that rest is not rare. It is built into the structure of things. Accretion disks carry a quiet paradox within them. They appear both at the beginnings of things and at their endings. The same gentle physics that surrounds a forming star also shapes the glow around a black hole. Creation and conclusion share a common motion. Around young stars, disks are places of possibility. Dust drifts, gathers, and clings. Tiny grains meet again and again, slowly growing into pebbles, then stones, then worlds. Nothing here is rushed. Planets take millions of years to emerge, shaped by countless soft collisions and patient orbits. The disk holds space for becoming. Around black holes, the disk tells a different story, yet it moves in the same way. Here, matter is not assembling into something new, but releasing what it has been. Energy drifts outward as light. Motion settles. The disk becomes a long farewell, stretched across cosmic time. What's striking is how little the physics cares about the outcome. The disk does not know whether it is nurturing a beginning or accompanying an ending. It simply allows matter to move gently, to transform without violence, to follow curves instead of straight lines. This shared motion suggests that beginnings and endings are not opposites. They are phases along the same flow. Matter circles, energy changes form, structure appears, then fades, all without abruptness. In human experience, we often label moments as starts or finishes, arrivals or departures, but the accretion disk invites a softer view. Many changes are slow transitions. One role loosens as another forms. One thought fades as another takes shape. Nothing truly snaps into place. As you listen, you may feel yourself somewhere between waking and sleeping, not fully one or the other. That in-between space is its own kind of disk, a place where awareness circles gently, neither beginning nor ending, simply changing state. The universe seems comfortable with this ambiguity. It allows the same motion to serve many purposes. Perhaps you can allow yourself that comfort too, resting in transition, trusting that wherever this motion leads, it does not need to hurry. Not all matter in an accretion disk continues its inward journey. Very rarely and very gently in our telling, some of it finds another path. From the regions close to the centre, narrow streams of energy and particles can be launched outward, away from the disk, travelling vast distances through space. These are known as jets. Despite how dramatic they may appear in images, jets are not explosions. They are not tantrums of excess energy. They are more like release valves, a way for the system to stay balanced. When too much energy or motion gathers near the centre, some of it is redirected, guided along magnetic pathways that extend like invisible rails into space. The disk remains calm even as this happens. Jets do not tear it apart. They do not drain it suddenly. They coexist with the steady flow, removing just enough energy to allow the rest of the system to continue its patient work. What's important here is proportion. Most of the disk remains undisturbed. Most matter continues to orbit, glow, and drift inward slowly. The jets are rare, focused, and precise. They do not represent chaos. They represent regulation. In quieter terms, jets are a reminder that rest does not mean everything stays inside. Sometimes release is necessary. A thought let go, a breath exhaled fully, a tension allowed to leave the body rather than circulate endlessly. If your mind releases something tonight, a memory, a concern, a fragment of effort, it does not mean you are losing control. It means balance is being maintained. The larger rhythm remains intact. The accretion disk continues to shine, even as narrow beams of energy slip away into the dark. Nothing is diminished by this release. In fact, it is what allows the glow to continue. Long before any human mind wondered about black holes, light was already carrying their stories outward. Every glow from an accretion disk is a message, released patiently into space, travelling without urgency across vast distances. Light does not hurry, it simply moves, one constant speed, allowing time to stretch behind it. When matter in the disk releases energy as light, it lets go of a small piece of its motion. That light drifts away, unburdened, carrying information about where it came from, how fast the disk was turning, how warm it had become, how close it was to the centre. The disk does not speak, but light translates its motion into something that can be known. For scientists, this light is a gentle guide. By observing which wavelengths arrive, which colours, which energies, they can reconstruct the structure of the disk without ever touching it. The inner regions whisper in high energy tones. The outer regions speak softly in longer, calmer waves. All of it arrives together, layered, patient, coherent. But tonight, you don't need to analyse the message. You can simply rest with the idea that light is how motion leaves a trace, that nothing truly disappears. It transforms, then travels, then eventually meets awareness. Some of the light from distant accretion disks began its journey millions, even billions of years ago. It crossed empty space, slipped past stars and dust, curved around galaxies, all to arrive at a telescope, and eventually at a human thought. That patience is extraordinary. That consistency is comforting. In a quieter sense, your own experiences leave light behind as well. Not literal photons, but impressions. Feelings soften into memories. Effort transforms into understanding. Nothing needs to be held tightly. What matters will find its way forward in time. As the disk continues to glow, it releases its story without expectation. It does not need to know who will receive it. It simply shines, trusting the universe to listen when ready. You can do the same now. There is nothing you need to communicate, nothing you need to solve. Let your thoughts release their energy gently and allow whatever remains to drift outward, unburdened. Now we linger with a single idea and let it slow everything down. Picture one photon leaving the accretion disk, just one. It slips free from the warm, rotating flow and begins its journey outward. There is no sense of departure, no farewell. The disk does not notice it leaving. The photon simply goes. It travels at the same steady speed it will always have. Not fast, not slow, just constant, through empty space, through darkness so complete it feels like rest itself. For long stretches of its journey, nothing happens, no obstacles, no changes, just motion without event. This photon may travel for millions of years, perhaps longer. Entire stars are born and fade while it is still moving. Galaxies shift slightly in their slow dance. Yet for the photon, there is no waiting, no boredom, no awareness of time passing. From its own perspective, the moment it leaves the disk is the same moment it arrives somewhere else. That contrast is gentle and strange, an eternity for the universe, an instant for the light. As you rest with this image, allow time to loosen its grip on you. You don't need to measure minutes. You don't need to know how long you've been listening. Like the photon, you can simply move through this moment without keeping track. The accretion disk releases light continuously, never concerned with when or where it will arrive. Some photons will never meet anything at all. They will drift forever, carrying their quiet message into expanding space. And that is enough. If sleep begins to come now, it doesn't need to announce itself. It can arrive the way light does, without sensation, without awareness of transition. One moment you're listening, the next, you are resting. No distance felt in between. Stay with the idea of the long journey that feels like no journey at all. Let time stretch outward, while this moment remains soft and still. When we step back far enough, the accretion disk changes its character. Up close, it is motion layered upon motion, warmth emerging from friction, time stretching and bending. But from a great distance, all of that complexity softens into simplicity. The disk becomes a quiet shape, a thin ring of light against an ocean of dark. From afar, the individual particles vanish from awareness. No single orbit can be traced. No local disturbance can be seen. What remains is a calm, luminous presence, steady, balanced, almost abstract. Complexity has not disappeared. It has simply blended into coherence. This is one of the universe's most comforting habits. Distance turns effort into elegance. When you are close to something, a task, a worry, a thought, every small movement can feel loud. But when you step back, patterns emerge. The noise resolves into flow. Astronomers experience this constantly. They cannot touch accretion disks or stand beside them. They see only light arriving from far away, averaged over time and space. And yet, that distance is what makes understanding possible. The disk reveals itself most clearly when viewed gently, without intrusion. The same is often true within the mind. When thoughts feel tangled, it can help to imagine viewing them from far away, as if they were light reaching you from a distant system. You don't need to follow each one. You can simply notice their presence, their general tone, their brightness or softness. From this distant perspective, the accretion disk looks peaceful. Nothing suggests strain. Nothing hints at the extreme gravity beneath. The glow is smooth, continuous, reliable. Darkness and light coexist without conflict. As you rest now, you are allowed this distance too. You don't need to be inside every sensation. You can observe your own state from afar, noticing only that things feel quieter, slower, less defined. The disk continues to shine, unconcerned with how it is perceived. Near or far, it remains what it is, and you too can rest in that same permission, to be exactly as you are, without adjustment, without effort. Over immense spans of time, the quiet work of the accretion disk leads to something extraordinary. Through patience alone, giants are made. Black holes do not grow through sudden feasts. They grow through accumulation, a long series of small moments, each one almost insignificant on its own. A particle drifts inward. Energy is released. Light departs. The particle moves on. Then another follows, and another. Over millions of years, these gentle steps add up. The accretion disk is what makes this growth possible. Without it, matter would fall in too quickly, releasing its energy in a brief flare before disappearing. With the disk, growth becomes controlled, measured, sustainable. The black hole increases its mass slowly, quietly, without disturbing the wider universe too much. This slow growth has shaped entire galaxies. In their centres, supermassive black holes have spent billions of years gathering mass through disks like the one we've been imagining. Their influence extends far beyond their size, not through violence, but through consistency. A steady presence at the core, shaping motion around it over cosmic time. What's remarkable is how indirect this influence is. The black hole itself remains hidden. We never see it. What we see is the disk, the process, not the object. Growth revealed through motion, not possession. There is a gentle lesson here. some of the most profound changes happen invisibly. They don't announce themselves while they're happening. They become noticeable only when we look back, after time has done its work. Rest can grow this way too. You don't always feel yourself becoming more relaxed moment by moment. Often, it's only later, when tension is gone, when sleep has arrived, that you realise how far you've drifted. The accretion disk never rushes to complete its task. It simply continues. Orbit by orbit, exchange by exchange, allowing something immense to emerge from almost nothing at all. And in that patience, the universe builds its giants, softly. If you were to watch the accretion disk at the smallest possible scale, it might not look calm at all. Individual particles move unpredictably. Tiny interactions send them veering slightly off course before they settle again. From this close perspective, motion appears messy, almost chaotic. And yet, when you step back just a little, something remarkable happens. The randomness fades, patterns appear, rings form, flow becomes visible, chaos does not vanish, it simply averages out. This is one of the quiet miracles of physics. Order does not always require planning. It can arise naturally when many small, uncoordinated actions follow the same simple rules. Gravity pulls inward, motion carries sideways, energy is shared. Over time, these rules shape chaos into structure. The accretion disk is a living example of this principle. No particle knows the shape of the disk. No particle intends to create beauty. Yet beauty emerges anyway through repetition and patience. There is a sense of relief in this. It suggests that order is not fragile. It does not depend on constant attention. It can emerge even when the details are imperfect. In human experience, we often feel overwhelmed by the small, chaotic pieces of life, stray thoughts, unfinished tasks, unpredictable feelings. From up close, they can feel unmanageable. But when allowed time and distance, they often settle into something coherent on their own. You don't need to organise every thought tonight. You don't need to resolve every detail. Like particles in the disk, your thoughts can move freely within simple boundaries. Rest will emerge naturally from that freedom. The accretion disk continues its quiet transformation, turning disorder into flow without effort. And you can trust the same process within yourself, letting chaos soften into calm, one orbit at a time. Every orbit in the accretion disk carries a memory, not a memory stored in thought, but one held in motion itself. Each particle remembers where it has been by how it continues to move. Its speed, its direction, its gentle resistance to falling straight inward. All of these are echoes of earlier paths. In this way, the disk becomes a record of history written without words. Matter that once drifted freely through a galaxy now traces precise curves. Gas that once wandered between stars now follows a shared rhythm. Nothing has forgotten its past. It has simply transformed it into pattern. This memory is not fixed. It changes slowly, softened by friction and time. With each orbit, a little energy is released, a little momentum shared. The memory fades gradually, never abruptly. What remains is not loss, but integration, past motion becoming present structure. There is something tender about this process. The disk does not erase what came before, it absorbs it. It allows earlier movement to shape what comes next, without letting it dominate. The past influences the present, but does not control it. You might notice this same quality in your own thoughts tonight. Old memories may drift through, not sharply, not urgently, but as softened impressions. They don't demand action. They simply pass by, like familiar stars seen through a window. Rest does not require forgetting. It allows remembering to become gentle. Experiences lose their edges. What once felt heavy becomes lighter when carried slowly enough. The accretion disk continues to turn, holding the memory of motion without clinging to it. And as you listen, you can allow your own memories to do the same, present, but no longer pulling you anywhere. Near the heart of the accretion disk, temperatures rise to levels that feel almost unimaginable. Matter moves so quickly, friction so persistent, that heat builds steadily. And yet, for all this intensity, there is no sound, no roar, no crackle, no echo. Space does not carry noise. There is no air to vibrate, no medium to transmit pressure waves. So even as the disk becomes hotter than most stars, it remains perfectly silent. Heat exists here without sensation, energy without announcement. This silence is not emptiness, it is fullness without disturbance. The disk is alive with motion, yet nothing interrupts the quiet. If you could somehow be near it, safely, impossibly, you would not hear its warmth. You would only see its light, steady and calm, speaking in colour rather than sound. There is something deeply soothing about this idea. We often associate intensity with noise, with urgency, with demand, but the accretion disk offers another possibility. Great energy can exist without agitation. Power can be quiet. In moments of deep rest, the body can feel warm and heavy, yet the mind remains still. Circulation continues, breathing continues, metabolism hums along, all without calling for attention, heat without sound, effort without strain. As you listen now, you might notice the absence of noise within. Even if there are faint sounds around you, there may be a deeper layer of quiet beneath them, a silence that holds everything without reacting. The accretion disk reminds us that calm is not the absence of activity. It is activity that has learned not to shout. And in that quiet intensity, rest becomes possible. Now we come to a place where language itself slows down. Imagine the inner edge of the accretion disk, the last stable orbit before everything changes. Matter circles here in perfect patience, closer than it has ever been, yet still not crossing. This edge is not sharp. It is not a line. It is a region, a gentle threshold where motion continues but possibility narrows. Nothing dramatic happens at this boundary. No alarms. No tearing of space. Matter does not suddenly realize where it is. It simply keeps orbiting as it has been, guided by the same rules, moving in the same calm curves. The difference is subtle, almost imperceptible. Here, the disk feels hushed. Not because motion has stopped, but because motion has become complete. There is nothing extra to do, no additional energy to release. The glow is smooth and even, like a final exhale held without strain. This is a place of suspension. Matter is still moving, still glowing, still circling, but it is also resting, not falling yet, not leaving, simply being held at the edge. If you imagine yourself here, you don't need to look ahead. You don't need to wonder what comes next. The edge does not ask for decisions. It offers support, a quiet balance between movement and surrender. This is what deep rest often feels like. Not sleep yet, not thought either, just a hovering stillness where awareness thins but does not vanish. A place where effort has ended, but drifting continues. Stay here for a while, at the edge, held by gravity, carried by motion, asked to do nothing at all. If sleep comes now, it will not feel like crossing a line. It will feel like continuing the same curve, only softer, dimmer, quieter. The accretion disk rests at its inner edge, glowing gently, unafraid of what lies beyond. And you can rest here too, for as long as you like. From this resting edge, it becomes easier to notice how deeply time and motion are entwined. In an accretion disk, time is not marked by clocks or events. It is marked by repetition. One orbit, then another still. Time passes because motion repeats. There is no single moment that matters more than the others. No orbit announces itself as special. Each one is quietly complete, then gives way to the next. In this way, time becomes gentle, It loses its sharp edges. It becomes something you move within rather than something that moves against you. Circles have this effect on time. They soften it. A straight line suggests urgency, a beginning rushing toward an end. A circle suggests return, continuity, the reassurance that nothing is truly lost, only revisited in a slightly different form. The accretion disk lives entirely in circles. Even as matter drifts inward over long periods, the immediate experience is always the same curve repeated. From within the disk, there is no sense of countdown, no approach to a final moment, just ongoing presence. Human rest often arrives the same way, not as a sudden drop into unconsciousness, but as a quiet repetition of familiar sensations. Breath in, breath out, the weight of the body against the bed, the slow return to the same thoughts, growing less defined each time they pass. Repetition is not boredom here, it is reassurance. Each return confirms that nothing needs to change, that it is safe to keep moving in the same gentle way. As you listened, you may feel yourself circling the edge of sleep, thoughts revisiting familiar places, then fading a little more with each pass. This is not resistance. It is how the mind loosens its grip on linear time. The accretion disk continues its endless turning, teaching time how to slow by curving back on itself. And you are free to follow that lesson now, letting moments repeat until they no longer need to be noticed. When we hear the word infinity, it often feels vast and unreachable, something too large to hold in the mind. Endless space, endless time, endless distance. But the accretion disk offers a gentler way to approach infinity, not through scale, but through repetition. Here, infinity is not a single, overwhelming concept. It is built from small motions, repeated patiently. One orbit is finite, so is the next, and the next. Yet when there is no final orbit, no last turn, repetition begins to resemble the infinite. Not because it stretches outward forever, but because it never demands an ending. The disk does not aim for infinity, it simply continues. And in that continuation, something timeless emerges. This is a quiet truth of the universe. Infinity is often made from ordinary moments that never insist on being special. A particle completes an orbit. It completes another. Over time, those simple acts weave something vast without ever trying to. In human experience, rest can feel infinite in the same way. Not because it lasts forever, but because while you are inside it, time stops asking questions. There is no how long. There is only now, repeating gently until awareness softens. If you notice your breath, it too is a small motion with no inherent endpoint. In, out, in, out. Each breath is complete on its own. Together they carry you through the night without needing to be counted. The accretion disk shows us that infinity does not require grandeur. It can live quietly inside small repeated acts. Motion does not need to escalate to become meaningful. It only needs to continue without pressure. As you drift now, allow yourself to rest in this kind of infinity. No future to reach, no past to resolve, just the comfort of small motions repeating, carrying you gently forward without asking where you're going. As matter spirals inward through the accretion disk, it gives something up. Not all at once, not with struggle, but gradually, almost generously. It releases energy, allowing light to carry that energy away. What might look like loss is actually transformation. Nothing in the disk simply disappears. Motion becomes warmth. Warmth becomes light. Light travels outward, leaving the system lighter, calmer, more balanced. What is lost in one form reappears in another. This exchange is quiet and continuous. The disk does not mourn what it releases. It does not cling to its energy. Letting go is part of how it survives. If energy were held too tightly, the disk would overheat, destabilize, tear itself apart. Release is not weakness here, it is wisdom. There is something deeply human in this pattern. Rest often requires release. Letting go of effort, letting go of urgency, letting go of the need to hold everything together. What leaves does not vanish. It becomes space. It becomes ease. Light, in this sense, is the universe's way of saying enough. Enough motion has been shared. Enough energy has been transformed. The system can continue. As you lie here listening, you might feel small releases happening on their own, a breath deepening, a muscle softening, a thought dissolving before it finishes. These are not losses. They're transformations making room for rest. The accretion disk glows because it knows how to let go, and in that glow, it remains stable, patient, alive. You can trust the same process now, allowing whatever is ready to leave to drift away as light. If you listen closely enough to the accretion disk, not with ears but with attention, its motion begins to feel familiar. The slow inward drift, the steady circling, the gentle release of energy, all of it echoes a rhythm you already know, the rhythm of breath. Breathing is not a straight line. It is not a task to complete. It is a cycle, in, around, out, around again. Each breath curves back into itself, just as each orbit does. There is motion, but no rush. There is repetition, but no boredom. In the accretion disk, matter moves inward only because it has first moved around. In the body, rest arrives only because breathing continues. You don't fall asleep by stopping the breath. You fall asleep by letting it repeat until awareness no longer needs to guide it. Notice how the disk does not take deeper breaths to hurry its progress. It does not force itself closer to the center. It allows the process to unfold at its natural pace. The glow appears because of consistency, not effort. Your breath can be the same tonight. You don't need to control it. You don't need to slow it deliberately. Simply noticing its circular nature is enough. In, then out, then back again. Each cycle complete, each one sufficient. There is also a gentle exchange happening with every breath, just as there is in the disk. You release what you no longer need. You take in what is available, nothing dramatic, nothing excessive. Just balance. As the accretion disk breathes out light, you breathe out tension. As it continues its steady motion, your body continues its quiet work without instruction. The two rhythms do not need to synchronize, they only need to coexist. If sleep comes soon, it will arrive on the exhale, not because you invited it, but because everything has already been allowed to continue on its own. Let the disk circle, let the breath circle, let awareness soften somewhere in between. As matter continues its long journey through the accretion disk, it becomes lighter, not in mass all at once, but in burden. With each orbit, a little energy is released, a little excess motion is let go. What remains is simpler, quieter, closer to rest. This falling away is not dramatic. No pieces break off suddenly, no sharp transitions announce themselves. Instead, change happens so gradually that it almost feels like continuity. The disk does not notice what it has lost, only that it can continue. What falls away is always what is no longer needed. Extra speed, excess heat, unshared motion. These things leave as light, drifting outward, never to return, and what remains is not diminished. It is refined, more balanced, more stable. There is something reassuring in this selectivity. The universe does not strip matter down harshly. It allows unnecessary parts to leave naturally, at a pace that does not disrupt the whole. Nothing essential is taken away. In human rest, something similar unfolds. As sleep approaches, certain things begin to fall away on their own. The need to analyze, the urgency of planning, the sharpness of concern, these do not disappear because you force them to. They fade because they are no longer required. What remains is simple awareness, sensation without story, presence without effort, a quiet core that does not need to move anywhere else. The accretion disk teaches us that shedding is part of continuation. To keep moving smoothly, something must always be allowed to leave. Holding everything would create strain. Letting go creates flow. As you rest now, you don't need to decide what should fall away. That choice is already being made gently beneath awareness. Trust the process. What needs to remain will remain. What is ready to go will drift outward, like light, without disturbance. It may seem like a contradiction, darkness that glows, and yet this is exactly what accretion disks reveal. The black hole itself remains unseen, wrapped in silence, absorbing everything that crosses its boundary. But around that darkness, light gathers. Motion reveals what cannot be seen directly. The glow of the disk does not expose the black hole. It does not illuminate the center. Instead, it traces the space around it, outlining absence with presence. We learn about the darkest objects in the universe not by seeing them, but by noticing how everything else moves nearby. This is a gentle way of knowing, indirect, patient, respectful of mystery. The universe does not force its deeper secrets into view. It allows them to be understood through context, through influence, through quiet effect. There is comfort in this. Not everything needs to be confronted head-on. Some things are better sensed at the edges, felt through how they shape the world around them. In the mind, darkness can work the same way. Uncertainty, fatigue, unformed thoughts. These do not need to be illuminated sharply. They can simply be allowed to exist, surrounded by softer awareness. What matters is not naming them, but letting them rest without pressure. The accretion disk glows because darkness is present. Without the pull of the unseen center, there would be no structure, no warmth, no light. The glow is not a defiance of darkness. It is a response to it. As you listen now, you might feel close to that center yourself. Not a place of fear, but of stillness. A quiet depth that does not ask to be understood, only to be held gently by the motion around it. Let darkness glow in this way tonight, not by shining directly into it, but by allowing calm to gather at its edges. That is enough. As the disk continues its slow, luminous turning, the idea of the center becomes quieter. We do not approach it with urgency. We do not attempt to cross into it. We simply acknowledge its presence, a still point around which everything else moves. The center of a black hole is not something we can describe easily. Physics itself grows uncertain there. But what we can say, gently, is that motion ends there. Time and space lose their familiar meanings. Change no longer unfolds in ways we can follow. Rather than imagining this as something violent or frightening, we can imagine it as absolute stillness. Not empty, not cold, but complete. A place where nothing needs to move anymore. The accretion disk never reaches this stillness directly. It circles it. It responds to it. It glows because of it. The center does not act. It does not push. Its influence is passive, constant, unchanging. This is a powerful image for rest. Deep rest does not pull at you. It does not demand surrender. It simply exists, and motion naturally quiets in its presence. If you feel close to sleep now, you may sense something similar. A stillness beneath thought, beneath sensation, beneath effort. You don't need to enter it deliberately. You can simply let your awareness orbit near it, growing softer with each pass. The universe does not rush matter into stillness. It allows countless orbits first, countless chances to release energy, to glow, to move gently. And only when nothing more needs to be expressed does motion finally cease. You're allowed the same patience. There is no deadline for rest. No correct moment to stop thinking. Stillness is already present, waiting quietly, at the center of experience. Near the end of our long orbit, the question we asked earlier drifts back into view, not sharply, not urgently, but softened by everything that has come after. Why does matter choose to spiral? Why does it move in circles instead of falling straight into darkness? After travelling through the quiet physics of the disk, the answer feels less like an explanation and more like a feeling. Matter spirals because spiraling gives time, because curves allow release, because circling is how motion learns to rest without stopping. The universe does not seek the shortest path. It seeks the gentlest one. What once sounded like a technical question now feels personal. Why do thoughts circle before sleep arrives? Why do memories loop softly at night? Why does rest come gradually, instead of all at once? Perhaps for the same reason. Circling is how systems soften. Repetition is how intensity fades. Spirals are how movement becomes calm without being forced. The accretion disk does not rush toward its end. It honours the journey. Each orbit gives matter a chance to let go a little more, to glow a little less brightly, to become simpler with time. The question answers itself through patience. As you listen now, you don't need to solve anything. You don't need to hold the question tightly. You can let it return, then drift away again, just like a familiar thought that no longer demands attention. Why does matter spiral? Why does rest take time? The answers do not need words. They are already present in the slow turning of the disk and in the gentle slowing of your own awareness. At this point in the journey, the boundary between listener and story begins to soften. The accretion disk is no longer only something far away circling an unseen center in deep space. It becomes a quiet mirror. You too are orbiting tonight. Your awareness circles a center of rest, passing near it, drifting away, returning again. Thoughts arise, move through, fade slightly, then return in gentler forms. None of them need to land. None of them need to finish. They only need to keep moving softly enough to lose their edges. In the disk, no single particle is asked to do anything special. It does not need to understand the whole system. It only needs to follow its curve. The structure emerges without effort. You can allow yourself the same simplicity. You do not need to manage your thoughts. You do not need to guide them towards sleep. Let them orbit. Let them circle familiar paths until they become less distinct, less interesting, less urgent. If a thought returns again and again, that is not a problem. Repetition is how importance fades. Each pass removes a little energy, a little sharpness, until what once felt heavy becomes almost transparent. You are not behind, you are not resisting rest. You are doing exactly what motion does when it is learning how to slow. For now, it is enough to be an orbiting thought, present, moving, gently losing speed, held by something deeper that does not need your attention. As the journey nears its quiet end, the image of the accretion disk begins to soften. The sharpness of its glow dims. The details that once felt important, heat, motion, light, gently loosen their hold. Nothing disappears suddenly. It simply fades, the way a familiar scene dissolves when your eyes close. The disk is still there, still turning, still glowing somewhere in the universe, but your attention no longer needs to follow each orbit. The image becomes more abstract now, a suggestion rather than a picture, a sense of slow movement without form. This fading is natural. It is how the mind prepares for rest. First, it releases detail. Then it releases structure. What remains is atmosphere, a feeling of calm continuity without specific objects to hold on to. If you notice the story slipping out of focus, that is not distraction. It is transition. Awareness is no longer gathering information. It is settling. The universe does not demand that you keep watching. It allows you to turn inward, to let the outer images dim while something quieter takes their place. Just as distant stars fade when the room grows dark, the accretion disk recedes into the background of your awareness. You don't need to say goodbye to it. Nothing has ended. The disk continues its patient motion whether it is observed or not. You're simply no longer orbiting the image so closely. As the picture fades, what remains is the rhythm you've been following all along, slow, circular, unhurried. That rhythm can continue without visuals, without words, without effort. Let the disk become darkness again. Let the glow dissolve into quiet. Let the motion carry on, unseen. Now the attention turns gently inward, away from distant disks and cosmic motion, and back toward the quiet space where you are resting. There is no sharp return, no sudden awareness, just a gradual settling, like dust drifting back to the ground after a long suspension in air. You may notice the weight of your body more clearly now, the way it meets the surface beneath you, the steadiness of that support. Nothing needs to be adjusted, nothing needs to be improved. The night holds you without question. Sounds, if there are any, feel farther away than before. They arrive softened, filtered, no longer asking for interpretation. Even silence feels fuller now, not empty, but complete. A background that does not need to be filled. The ideas we've travelled through no longer need to be followed. They can rest where they are. If fragments of imagery remain, a ring of light, a slow spiral, a sense of warmth, they can float freely, unconnected, fading when they're ready. This is the phase where effort ends. You're not listening in the same way anymore. Awareness is widening, thinning, spreading out. Like a river entering a calm lake, motion slows until direction becomes irrelevant. The night does not expect anything from you. It does not need attention or understanding. It simply allows rest to happen in its own quiet way. Whether you drift into sleep now or hover near its edge a little longer, both are fine. There is no wrong timing. Let yourself settle fully into this moment, into this hour, into this simple fact of being here, supported, unhurried, safe enough to let go. Before we close, there is one final feeling to hold. Not a concept, not an image, but a presence. Gravity. Throughout this journey, gravity has not appeared as force or threat. It has been steady, reliable, patient. It has held matter in orbit, allowed time to stretch, invited motion to soften. Gravity, in this quiet telling, has been a form of rest. Gravity does not need to move to be effective. It does not need to change. It simply remains and everything else adjusts around it. That constancy is deeply calming. It means nothing is required of you. Support is already present. In your own body there is a similar support, the weight of your limbs, the gentle downward pull that keeps you connected to where you are. You don't need to hold yourself together. Gravity is already doing that work. Rest does not always feel like floating. Sometimes it feels like being held, like being allowed to sink just enough to feel secure. The accretion disk rests in gravity's embrace, and in that embrace, it glows without strain. As sleep approaches, or perhaps has already arrived, you can trust this same support. You're not falling into darkness. You're being held by something steady and indifferent in the kindest possible way. There is nowhere else you need to go, no final effort to make. Gravity has you. There is nothing left to explain now. The motion we followed, the circling, the glowing, the letting go, does not need an ending. It simply continues, quieter than before, softer with each passing moment. What was once an image has become a feeling. What was once a thought has become rest. The universe keeps moving, gently, without asking for attention. Accretion disks turn, light drifts, time stretches and folds, and here, in this small human moment, awareness loosens its grip and allows itself to be carried. You don't need to remember any of this. You don't need to hold on to the story. Everything that mattered has already done its work. The rhythm remains, even as words fade, There is no centre to reach, no edge to cross, only flow. Everything flows. Sleep in that motion.